When it comes to covering the movies that I do on this channel, it becomes incredibly apparent that there are plenty of people out there who could seriously use a hug and a little kiss on the cheek. And today's video is no better example of that, as we cover When Evil Lurks, an Argentinian movie that leaves me thinking, are the Argentinians okay? The short answer being no, and the long answer being no, but with a lot of exclamation marks at the end. Written and directed by Damien Rugner, a person who I'm sure's infiltrated my very own nightmares to bring this unsettling imagery to life, When Evil Lurks is a nice wholesome time, perfect for the whole family. Damien also being a person who has an extensive history of creating things that make me say, well, that's not very nice, is it? He stated at an audience questions and answer session at Fantastic Fest that the idea for When Evil Lurks came to him after learning about a series of stories documenting pesticides negatively affecting people, leading him to take that idea and think, how can I make this even more demented? About as demented as those guys who steal your personal data and sell off for a profit. But thanks to today's sponsor Aura, you can now actually do something about that. Theft of personal data is something that happens to each and every one of us, from as small as our email addresses being sold to spammers, to sensitive data being retrieved and sold for far more nefarious purposes, like your hentai collection and identity theft. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives' information, it could all be out there. Aura shows you which data brokers are selling your information and automatically submits an opt-out request for you to make sure that you never accidentally click on one of those hot local mums in your area emails ever again. Cleaning up your information not only helps reduce the amount of spam you get, but protects you from hackers who could use this information to help them access your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information that could put you in a situation only described as not very good. Aura comes with other features like a VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and even more without having to set up several different apps, with it being easy to set up at one affordable price. You might have one of these tools separately, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open for all of those backdoor enthusiasts. The best thing about Aura is, much like my severe depression, is that it's always on, working in the background no matter what you do. So if you're interested in getting protected yourself, you can go to aura.com/bigwill to start your 2 weeks free trial, also linked below in the description. Don't let those backdoor enthusiasts win. The movie begins with shots being fired near the home of brothers Pedro and Jimmy, and once the morning comes around, they venture towards the sounds of the gunshots to discover someone having an incredibly bad day. An incredibly bad day as this person no longer has the bottom half of their body, as they've tried out this new instant weight loss hack. A device and a map near the body leads them to the house of their neighbor Maria, where they find out that the remains they found belong to a man with the occupation known as a cleaner, which is rather ironic considering that they're going to need a cleaner to clean him up. He was heading out there to deal with Maria's son, Uriel. He was coming to kill him at the request of Maria because she doesn't like her kids very much. Looking like someone who could have their very own TLC show, Uriel is bloated and covered from head to toe in blisters, as he's what they refer to as a rotten, and what I refer to as not a good time. A rotten is a person with a demon inside of them, and not in the fun way, with that just being the escort's quirky name, but an actual demon who's taken over the body and hopes to one day be reborn. And to make matters worse, Uriel has been left like this for over a year, with them hoping that prayer would be enough alone to help them rid the demon. But God doesn't listen to Argentinians. In response to this, they decide to visit their other neighbor, Ruiz, who owns the land that Maria and her family are living on, with him deciding to deal with this situation by kicking in the front door of some old lady's house while waving a shotgun around. This rather well-mannered chap then proceeds to point it directly at Uriel, before being told that killing him with a firearm will only make the evil worse. Sounds like some anti-gun rhetoric to me, boys. Realizing that they can't kill him, they decide to do the next best thing and get rid of him, because no fat people allowed. While lifting him out of the house using a bedsheet that he's been lying on for a year straight, diabetes juice starts to drip out of the bottom of it before the sheet tears open, dropping him onto the floor. Eventually, they manage to get him into the back of the truck and plan to take him far away from the house and ditch him at the side of the road, like you would with anyone in need of medical attention. But once they reach their destination, they realize that he's gotten off at an earlier stop, as the truck bed is opened and he's gone sliding down the road, covered in his own pus. Thinking that they're far enough away from their homes now, Ruiz tells them to just leave him there wherever he fell, because I'm sure no one will notice the bloated pus-covered man lying at the side of the road. And the next morning, after returning home to his pregnant wife, Ruiz is called outside after she finds a goat amongst the other goats, something which seems to greatly disturb her, as Argentinians are racist against goats. Ruiz, wanting to show that poor little defenseless animal just how tough he really is, fires off a shot to scare the goats, and they all run but one. So after being emasculated by a farm animal in front of his wife, he goes to shoot it, but is quickly interrupted by his Pedro's wife, who tells him that shooting the beast will condemn them all. But not liking the opinions of women, Ruiz shoots the goat anyway, because he's a big strong man. A big strong man who suddenly takes an axe to the back of the skull in a rather strange turn of events, considering that's not the ideal place to store one. Once Ruiz's mind has been expanded on the topic, his pregnant wife faces the axe towards her skull and gets herself a triple kill. Maria's younger and slightly more slender son discovers the bodies of the post-birth and pre-birth abortion and comes running to tell Pedro and Jimmy. He tells them that his mother has also gone missing, as she couldn't stand to be around that annoying kid anymore. Pedro tells him that for one night only he can stay in their barn, because if it's good enough for Jesus, then it's good enough for you. Realizing that things are ramping up and the evil occurrences are only going to increase, Pedro decides to head right to the heart of the evil, his ex-wife. His ex-wife Sabrina and her new husband Leo live with Pedro's two sons, Santino and low-functioning autistic boy Jer, as well as Leo's own daughter Vicky. Pedro strips off naked in front of his ex's boyfriend to assert his dominance, and tells Sabrina and Leo that there's a possessed one in town and it's running free. He's removed his clothes due to any potential residue left behind from his interaction with Uriel, when suddenly the family dog, who was exposed to Pedro's dirty underwear, suddenly and viciously bites Vicky across the face because he doesn't like what he tasted. The dog runs out of the house with a small child in its mouth, and Leo takes off after it with a shotgun while being repeatedly told by Pedro to not shoot it. But despite being told not to use guns, Leo finds and shoots the dog anyway because he's really more of a cat person. Somehow, Vicky returns home completely fine after a few minutes of absolute chaos, with there being absolutely no way that she would be fine at all after going through what she just went through, with Pedro clearly not trusting it. Kids are evil, and he knows it. Vicky tells her mother that Daddy will come home and kill you with a car, immediately followed by Daddy coming home and killing her with a car. He crushes both Sabrina and Vicky against the wall of the house, with once again, Vicky seeming to be completely unharmed while appearing to be happy about it. That inheritance is going to be hers. Pedro gets out of there with his two boys, because girls are kinda smelly, before picking up his brother and their mother. Their mother, who doesn't appear to be taking them seriously when it comes to the possessed ones, and explaining to her grandson Santino the 7 rules that you must follow in order to not become possessed yourself. Don't use an electric light, don't stay close to animals, don't take anything that was close to them, don't call evil by its name, don't shoot them, which obviously falls under don't hurt them, but oh well, and don't be afraid of dying, which makes about as much sense as saying don't be poor. Oh, would you look at that? Problem solved. Thanks, Grandma. After stopping to buy some ice cream, because what else would you do after witnessing your ex-wife become a human pancake, when suddenly one of their phones ring, and it's Sabrina, something that should be impossible. Pedro answers the phone to hear Sabrina's voice sounding a little bit flat, with her saying that she knows where they are, and that she's coming to get her children back. Knowing that that can't be Sabrina on the phone, Pedro throws it on the floor and starts destroying it, because maybe the Amish were right. Jimmy tells him that he knows of someone who might be able to assist them with their problem, someone named Myrta, who's been involved with a situation like this in the past, leading me to think that the South Americans have got some really weird stuff going on. After reaching Myrta's home, she accepts them and says that she will help, but Jer refuses to leave the car and to enter the house, causing Pedro to stay in there with him. And in the middle of the night, while people are sleeping, the evil presence arrives as it wipes a bloodied handprint on the side of the car, as we also see a shadow in Myrta's room somehow moving on its own, because modern physics doesn't really exist. The grandmother wakes up to the sight of Sabrina in the bedroom holding Santino, when suddenly she realizes that she's got a really bad case of sunburn. After leaving the room to get Pedro because women are scary, he heads upstairs to see Sabrina holding his son, before she calmly walks out of the room and drops from the balcony. After rushing outside, fully expecting to see his son decorating the concrete, he finds absolutely no sign of either of them, while Pedro is frantically running around looking for the woman who kidnapped his son, right after he kidnapped him from her. Myrta tells Jimmy that there's a demon inside of Jer, something that has and does unfortunately get said in real life, as it's not unheard of throughout history for people with disabilities to be mistaken for people who are possessed. But in this case, Myrta seems to be genuinely right, as that ghost has got a touch of the tism. Jer's hands are contorted and bent backwards in a completely unnatural state, as she explains to Jimmy that there are cases of demons entering disabled people's bodies and having control over them physically, but with no understanding of how to control their minds. What a bunch of ableist demons. Myrta has the same device that Pedro and Jimmy found on the cleaner back at the beginning of the movie, because she too is also a cleaner, because she has crippling OCD and must clean everything. She explains that in order to make this stop, then they're going to need to kill the original rotten that caused all of this to start. Uriel, who fell off the back of the truck somewhere, and who is now living amongst the wildlife as a giant sentient slug. Myrta and Pedro head off to find and kill Uriel with her special equipment, while Jimmy heads off in a different direction to track down Sabrina Sabrina and Santino, and unfortunately for Jimmy, he discovers them. Not unfortunate because kids are a fucking nightmare, but unfortunate because Sabrina's got her hands in the back of his skull as if she's trying to reach the Pringle at the bottom of the tube. He drives past her slowly and watches as she's pulling out and eating chunks of his brains, and decides to drive full speed into her and to crash into a tree because not only did he miss out on her previous car crash and got a bit of FOMO about it, but he's upset because he's the only one allowed to eat small children's brains around here. Back with the grandmother who's waiting at Myrta's house with Jer, suddenly he walks into the house and begins talking to her in a completely normal way. They cured his autism. Now only if they could do the same for me. And near the location where Uriel went missing, Pedro and Myrta discover a school nearby, with Myrta saying that it's more than likely where he'll be because Evil likes children. Just ask Jimmy Savile. And once they make it to the school, they discover a classroom full of children, despite it being the middle of the night. What a bunch of nerds. One of the children proceeds to tell them that if they're looking for Uriel, that they can find him at a nearby teacher's home, before another child appears and tells them that he's actually at her home instead. So in response to having to hear two children talk, Pedro violently slams the door into the little girl's face because children will be seen but not heard. Realizing that Uriel is obviously here and they're just trying to divert them away from him, they head back inside of the school, where they discover that all of the adults have been placed beneath the floorboards, John Wayne Gacy style. They discover that Uriel has been placed beneath the bodies, and Myrta, being the only one qualified to be giving orders right about now, gives Pedro an order to not go in that room, immediately followed by Pedro going in that room, followed by Myrta being jumped by a group of 7-year-olds and being violently put into an early retirement with a hammer to the head. Enraged, Pedro marches towards a Uriel who is mocking him, picking up and beating him to death with one of the parts supposed to be used by Myrta to stop this, resulting in him not killing him in the required way, being the exact thing that the demon wanted. With Uriel's skull left looking like the nut of a testicular cancer survivor, suddenly a demon emerges from him as he has been reborn. And there's nothing worse than that. Kids being born. A demon, now with exactly what he wants, walks away leaving Pedro behind as he's no threat to him, leaving the brothers no choice but to return to Jer and their mother who is nowhere to be found. So after making it back to the property with the brothers and Jer, Jimmy finds the boy who's still been staying in their barn, who confesses to killing the original cleaner back at the beginning of the movie and feasting on his own mother because a voice in his head told him to do it. And in the house with Pedro, Jer, who's been acting like his usual self, giving his father absolutely no indication that he was walking and talking completely different, suddenly begins choking while sitting at the dinner table. And as Pedro comes to investigate the sound of why his son doesn't have the common decency to die quietly, he discovers chunks of human hair and flesh in his mouth, as well as his mother's necklace. Jer got peckish and decided to skip the meal that Grandma makes and go straight for Grandma. The movie then comes to its rather feel-good ending, with Pedro outside of the house doing a little cry about it, while we see that the fireplace is currently burning, alluding to the fact that he has just killed his own son. Something which has been hinted at throughout the entire movie, as the reason for Sabrina and Pedro's original divorce is because he tried to kill Jer and his family many years ago by blocking the heaters, and here he is once again, killing his son with something made for making heat. So before we bring things to an end, I'd like to just give a massive shout out and a big thank you to all of the YouTube members and patrons. The people who go out of their way every month to continue to support the channel, something which I'm incredibly thankful for. If you're interested in becoming a YouTube member or a patron yourself, not only are you just generally being a great support, but you also get access to a few little perks, like being able to join the private Discord server, where you can then see uncensored versions of all videos going forwards. So starting off with this week's new YouTube signups, a massive thank you to Jap C, Christopher, Philip Pearson, Akmagic, Sylvan Kleben, The Dog, Brandon Jones-Morowski, Proceeding First 7, Tristan, Danny Smith, Gualberto Carrion, Emil Nielsen, Mr. Elf 24, Just Rave, Praz, NF Cause 1698, Brain Dead 1595, William Aronwitz, AA Ron, Jackson Vandermeer, Emo69, X Scrum, and Jessica Magic, Zaza Lord, Berkson, Booked Splash, Amit, Not Emmett, Shever, Starlord, Matt M, Hull Horse, Ryder Blade, Connor Stewart Webster, Sierra, and Ipe Garcia. And moving over to this week's new Patreon signups, a massive thank you to Elias Wackoff, Dill13, Jax, Orbit Splitzo, Geo65, Defter Kibbles, Nathan Adams, Camellia Davis, LMAO I Should Be Saving Money, Mr. Unknown, Yusuf Pasale, Froguan, Jeremiah Kidd, Sev Hulenga, Cody Montmini, The Packet Thrower, James Warner, Sage Cordova, ROR Red, Jamie Perez, Maxine Cornells, Stacey's Beauty and Glam, Sawood Kidwai, Frogsong 1, Harry Pilgrim, Connor Clark, Mateo, Hannah MacArthur, Ellen Holmberg, Jacob Brown, Nate Blackburn, Gallops, Care Homes, SM, and Stephanie Olafsson. So once again, a massive shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, and a big thank you to everyone else for watching.